Hi guys, I hope you're all doing great today. A lot of updates today from the land of fire and ice. There's trouble in Grindavik with tourists and residents, so that is a very interesting story. There's updates about the defense walls, and there's of course update about the imminent eruption that everyone is waiting for. So what's going on there? I will let you know in this video, so stay tuned. So let's start with the residents of Grindavik. You know, residents are allowed back in town, and businesses and workers and reporters to some extent, but the town is closed for everyone else. But we've already heard like a few days ago that there's a checkpoint to get into Grindavik with a barcode, and one resident or business owner was waiting there to get in, and then there was a bus with tourists coming, and you know, there's some geysers in the area where tourists want to have a look at, and it's close to Grindavik. So residents and this business owner was upset about why are tourist buses blocking the roads and why they're standing there. But it seems they caught tourists inside the town now. And I want to tell you something funny. I saw an advertising today. I normally don't use Edge, but I open it from time to time when I'm looking for something that I'm using their search engine. So I open the front page, and you know, there's always these articles and advertisements, and I see this advertisement here for like accommodation in Grindavik, and that's not the only one. While I was browsing around, it popped up on websites, different hotels, but all inside of Grindavik. So yeah, I'm not sure. There might be people that are not aware that they cannot stay in Grindavik right now, or they keep these ads running just in case. You never know. So who knows, right? There's also an interesting thing that I want to talk to you about, what the Icelandic Meteorological Office has released. I told you in my last video, we talked about the different lava flow scenarios, the maps that they have released. Should the eruption be in the Hagafell area, where would the lava flow towards Grindavik? Should it be like in the Sutnuka crater series, where would the lava flow, and how fast would it reach the Swartsengi area or Grindavik? Then should the eruption be in the area where we have seen it just almost like only 3 weeks ago? Where would it flow? How fast would it reach Grindavik and the defense walls around the Swartsengi power plant? But there was a little note that was underneath there. What would happen if the magma comes straight up in Swartsengi? So that was interesting. I'll talk to you about this in a minute. Let's finish talking about the tourists. So some residents that have homes, and one resident in particular that has homes on the street where the 3 homes are that have been destroyed by the lava flow in January. The resident was there and saw tourists inside the town, running around, taking selfies, taking pictures. So while the residents of Grindavik were forced to leave their homes and leave the towns again after visiting their property, there were tourists who had a tour or were on their way to the Blue Lagoon, and it seems they have at that time entered the town unsupervised. So they were standing on the still hot lava that was flowing inside Grindavik, and they took pictures of the properties that were destroyed by the lava flow. And the residents said, so I was noticing the tourists, and they were standing by the lava. They were taking pictures of the ruined homes and of other people's homes. And so the residents said, us as real residents of Grindavik, we don't do all that out of respect for those who are losing their homes. So the residents also says the tourists have been climbing around in that still steaming warm lava, or hot in some areas. And then the resident says, and I think that is correct, because then someone gets injured, and then it's us residents of Grindavik who are being criticized for being in the town. And then it's pointed out that it's so dangerous to be here, but this is something that the residents would never do. So what do you think, guys? I mean, I'm definitely sure that the residents has a point here, but how do you prevent tourists from going there? I don't know, because maybe they walk around, or how did they get in there? I would like to know that. Certainly they can't get in there by car because there's roadblocks and checkpoints. And it did sound that it was daylight. So I wonder if they were sneaking in from the back, but you know, this is uneven ground there, the fields, and then I think that is risky. The civil defense has said there are many unmapped cracks and sinkholes and fissures, and you know, some soil might be unstable. If you step on it, there might be another sinkhole forming. And they especially said stay away from the open areas, from the fields, from the grass areas, stay on sidewalks, stay on roads that have been tested or have been cleared for traffic. So I'm not sure how the tourists got to that area. Did they come in basically from the eastern road that goes into Grindavik and did sneak in there? Because from there it's not that far to see these homes, because if they come from the western side, they basically have to get all through the town. And if they want to walk around the town, there is the defense wall and the lava flow. So I don't know, but I have to side with the residents. I think that's not good, and I think the tourists really should stay out of that area. It's still a vulnerable area for the residents, and it's a very heartbreaking situation for everyone who owns property or who has lived in that town. So tourists, stay out of this. But you know, as we see how many tourists are flocking back to the Blue Lagoon, and we know this is how humans are. They're searching for the spectacular, for the disasters where they can like look at stuff. So it seems that the whole scenario that's happening there with these eruptions and the earthquakes and the drama that's happening there is attracting the tourists. So, but if they do what they did there, that's not a good thing to do. But I want to talk to you about the civil defense walls that are around the Swartsengi area, and we know that there are also defense walls around the Grindavik area, but they are working to finish or extend or make them better, like 24/7 still, especially on the defense walls near Grindavik. And they're saying they're working 6 days around the clock, and that the work is going well. Defense walls that they're building, they're north of Grindavik, and then they're working also right now. So the northern defense wall, that was quite helpful when we had the January eruption, but now they're working on the southern part of the east defense wall, of the eastern defense wall, and that's underway. And also they have started on the defense walls on the western part of the town. The situation north of Grindavik is very good, and it's also quite good in the eastern part. So they're trying to finish the western part of the defense wall. And of course, there is a lot of pressure on the workers to finish these walls, because there is an increased pressure for them because the eruption is imminent and the magma chamber is filling up, and we could see an eruption like at any hour, and at little to no warning. They're saying less than 30 minutes, depending on the location of the eruption, how far the magma needs to travel underground from the magma chamber in Swartsengi to the actual location of the eruption. So if it has to travel further, like really down into Grindavik, it might cause earthquakes along the way. So we have to see the seismic activity has decreased compared to the last few days, but it was like a total of 38 earthquakes around a 24-hour period. So we will have to see. I mean, as soon as an earthquake cluster is starting, then we know, okay, we can expect an eruption very, very soon. They have installed like sirens, warning sirens, and if you have seen the Walk With Me Tim video when he was in the Blue Lagoon, he was in his hotel room when at 6 a.m. the sirens started to ring. So they were quite loud, and they're comparing it now that these warning sirens are similar to a nuclear drill if you do tests, like. And so they did these tests. They sounded the warning sirens in Grindavik and in the Swartsengi area last night for about a minute. So the sound is really the same as in like anti-aircraft sirens that were used in tests for nuclear attacks. But of course, I mean, what else did you need these sirens for in the past, right? I mean, we know there's sirens in Hawaii, but I guess it's the same kind of sirens. The information officer of the Civil Protection has given an interview, and he said people that are 50 years and older, they get a little uncomfortable because, you know, they have heard these exercises in the past when they were kids. So yeah, I mean, 50 years, maybe not so much, but I would say people that are mid 70s and plus that were kids during the last World War, it might affect them negatively. But even I remember as a kid in Germany, they were regular siren tests. So we got used to the sound of sirens. So honestly, I don't remember why they did these tests, but I think they did the tests to see that the sirens still work, and they did different sound patterns. Every pattern means something. So I have heard them as a kid very, very often. So it doesn't disturb me, and I didn't expect any bombs being thrown at me. But of course, for my mom and my grandmother, it was a different scenario. I can't really say that I remember that they felt uncomfortable, but, you know, 50 years old, I don't think it's a problem. But, you know, everyone knows why they're there, so they're a good thing. So I think it should change into a good thing when you hear these sirens. Overall, they're saying this siren exercise went very well, so that it's not a surprise for people when these sirens go off, and that the people understand that this means they need to get away. So if there's an eruption again in this area, the sirens will go off. They're saying just like they did at the last eruption. It would be nice if they could go off a little earlier, maybe when the earthquake swarm starts and not when the eruption starts. So the civil defense did activate these sirens, but the police in Sudurns basically had to give the go. So now they're working on ensuring that these sirens can be operated from as far as the capital area, so that you don't have to be in the area to push the button. Okay, so that way they don't need to have a local responder in the area, and I think that really makes sense. Remember, they told the residents, the businesses, and everyone else that was allowed or is allowed access to Grindavik that they are there at their own risk. And now let's talk about what the Icelandic Meteorological Office has released. I've shown it to you yesterday. They have released a new hazard map. So the area that's in red here now, that's the area where they think we will most likely see the next eruption. That's basically in the area where we had the December eruption and now the February eruption. That is kind of the best case scenario. Better than further south, because then we've seen the lava flow models yesterday. Check out that video. It's quite interesting. It would flow towards Grindavik and inside Grindavik if the defense walls will not hold. But the prediction of the lava flow model was even that it could flow to even destroy the edges of Grindavik. It could flow in there as well. So that's the area where they think it could happen, and they have given predictions how long the lava would need to flow to reach critical infrastructure. So it's all in my yesterday's video. I put it in the end screen. But also one scenario that we haven't talked about yesterday is the scenario, what if the magma comes up straight up from the magma chamber that is underneath the Swartsengi area and the Blue Lagoon and the power plant, because the magma chamber is right underneath. And it's not that we can say it's 100% for sure that this will never happen. No, this is not the case. It can happen. Is it super likely right now? They don't think so. They think it's more likely in the Sutnuka crater series because the magma has flown there in the past, and there's the tunnels and there's the way where it can flow. But of course, the magma chambers there is filling up, and that could make the crust above it or the rocks around it brittle and crumbly, so that in the long run it might get easier for the magma to come up. So what do they say about this? So they're saying, after they listed all the potential lava flows in all the potential areas, I don't want to go through this again because I did this in my last video, but they state at the bottom of this, the fact that there are now clear signs of a land rise in the Swartsengi area does not mean that there is the most likely place for an eruption there. No, of course not, right? Because magma always takes the way of least resistance, and it has already formed all these tunnels and underground dikes into the Sutnuka crater series, and then we've seen it flown south towards Grindavik and erupt at the doorsteps of Grindavik, and it has also extended to the north of the Sutnuka crater series. So, but they're saying it is estimated, among other things, from the fact that the Earth's crust above the magma tunnel at the Sutnuk's crater is much weaker than the Earth's crust above the land rise in Swartsengi. That is true because there in the Sutnuka area, there we have seen all these magma intrusions and eruptions, so it already has come to the surface there. So it's not super stable in this area because there have been these eruptions. So that definitely makes sense. But they're saying if the scenario becomes a reality, that the magma will go straight up to Swartsengi, into Swartsengi, where the power plant is, and the Blue Lagoon. It is estimated that it will take the magma at least 4 to 7 hours to reach the surface from the first sign of such a event, from the beginning of the measurements of such an event. So I think they mean an earthquake swarm, right? If the magma needs to find the way to the surface, it needs to dig and rumble. So 4 to 7 hours, that's a long time. They have given quite a long time in all their potential scenarios, although I kind of find in reality the warning time was always shorter. But you know, that sentence means it is a scenario, a potential scenario. So it's not like, I've seen some comments where people said, well, the Blue Lagoon is the safest place. It's the safest place to be there in the hotel. No, it's not. The safest place would be like out of the Reykjanes Peninsula, but definitely out of the Swartsengi Grindavik area, towards the Reykjavik area, Keflavik airport, wherever, just out of this area where the eruption can be expected. We know there's this 15-kilometer long magma dike, so it's most likely that along this dike, basically the eruption can occur, but they are basically saying there is a scenario that it might come straight up, and there are volcanic systems in other countries and other spots on the earth where it is coming straight up. So this is not something super unusual or something. Is it super likely right now? Probably not. But as I say, better safe than sorry. I would not feel super comfortable. So that as a side note. And they also said again, and that makes the prediction and the warning time harder, that the weather conditions may affect their monitoring systems and therefore the evacuation. So the effectiveness of the monitoring of the Icelandic Meteorological Office is depending on the sensitivity of the real-time GPS measurements of these earthquake measurement devices. But the sensitivity is highly dependent on weather conditions. High wind and surf affect the low frequency in the turbulence measurements, where waves appear as turbulence, and fog and dark clouds then affect the visual confirmation of eruptions through cameras. We know there's a lot of web cameras. So it is difficult, right? And that's why the warning time could be basically non-existent if the weather is very, very bad. And they might not even be able to see clearly through the cameras what is going on. If it happens at night, maybe this is better visible because it's like darkness and then everything is lit up red. So the risk assessment, these risk assessment map that they have released now, does not take into account these weather conditions and other factors that may affect the risk of being in these danger zones. So those who have business in the danger zones need to be aware that the conditions inside these zones can change very quickly and without warning. So that's what they're saying. They're making it clear it could be without warning completely, guys. And I want to state one thing that I haven't really talked about to that extent is, what is the scenario if we will see an eruption inside of the defense walls of Grindavik? So they think there will be a small seismic activity in the Sutnuk's crater row that will start at Silingerfell, and then you can see the earthquakes moving south, because the magma is moving south. And you will also see deformation across the magma tunnel. And they think the probable notice warning time will be like 1 to 5 hours. So 1 to 5, that's quite a range, right? From when the first earthquakes are measured and the eruption begins. And I think this is important to know. They also saying the possibility exists for a fissure to open within the defense walls without an eruption having started at Hagafell, as it happened in January 14th, when a new fissure opened right at the town border about 4 hours after the eruption started at Hagafell. So yes, a second fissure has opened, and that caught them completely by surprise. And that was the fissure which destroyed the 3 homes. The lava flow that was coming from that fissure destroyed the 3 homes and did go into the town. I just have to remember, one of you guys corrected me, and you were, because I always say the lava has flown into town, and yeah, you're so right. It sounds strange that the lava is flying into the town. So it hasn't flown. That would be really scary, guys, if that was possible. Unless it's a very explosive eruption, then that can happen. But it has, I'm so used to say flown. It flowed into the city. I think I have said it like a few minutes before I said the same thing again. But whatever I say in the future, you know what I mean, guys. But I mean flowing, not flying. So just take this as a blonde factor, okay? I know you're smart, you know what I mean. So where was I? We're talking about the fissure opening inside of Grindavik. And then they're saying a magma intrusion that would also extend south of Hagafell will probably cause significant fissure movements in Grindavik. And we know, if you look at that map here, that's on the hazard map that the Icelandic Meteorological Office releases and always updated. But the small area on the left bottom of that map, there you can see the fissure systems that they have mapped already. These are older fissure systems, and they have, you know, these black lines with the small black lines crossing. These are all existing fissures. So if there's an eruption really inside the defense walls, that's very, very bad, with like lava flying around and new fissures opening. So I wanted to make that clear. Let's all hope for the best, that it will be again in the same area where it was this February, but then they have to brace for a new lava flow towards the Swartsengi area, and they've been working like crazy to protect their heating systems, this time the hot water pipes and electricity poles and stuff like that. So I said it in my last video, and I have to say it again. These workers that build the defense walls, that repair the infrastructure, that are trying to preserve the infrastructure, these guys are heroes, and I really think they should deserve something extra, because those guys, they're really risking their lives, because they keep working while the lava keeps coming at them, while the eruptions are in full force. They're with their excavators and dozers, they're on the defense walls, they're closing the gaps on the roads to close the defense walls. So they're there in this area, and especially in the January eruption, when that second fissure opened like by surprise, these workers were right there, not far away, because they've been working on the defense walls while the eruption was going. So that fissure could have opened somewhere else and they would have been at risk, right? So those guys are absolutely great. So guys, this was my update for now. Please subscribe if you want to be notified when the eruption is actually happening, and check out my channel. There's other stuff as well, guys. And thank you so much for your support, especially for supporting my farm on buymeacoffee.com. The link is in the description. Please subscribe there as well, so that I can send you some emails and that you can see my posts. And thank you for the supers you keep sending me here on YouTube. You guys are just awesome. And thank you so much, guys. I hope to see you in my next video. Stay safe. Bye-bye.